How we feeling? How we vibing? My favorite industry plant. I almost wrote something very mean to that person, but then I thought to myself, you don't know what you're talking about. Why would I even waste my wonderful weekend typing to you? There was the Big Pat article that came out, I think very poorly timed, not very sensitively written or received. Even if you believe every word you said in it, like let's say you're Pat the Flip, it's your truth. The timing and context of it is really bad, I think. If you were mad at the devs before, then you're like, fuck yeah, I'm justified. And if you weren't mad, you're probably mad now. More importantly, tons of people who didn't read it are just reading quotes from it. That's also gonna get you. Because I read the whole thing and I was like, bro, did not need to put all this out here. If you read the line about how no good games came out in like the last 10 years and you were surprised, you just have not been paying attention to Pat. That's how Pat is, dude. When he says play Guilty Gear, he means play Guilty Gear Xrd, the only good Guilty Gear. Duh. It's not even just about waiting to talk about it. I think also the tone of it is always gonna cause this kind of a reaction. I think it does a lot of damage to the game and everybody else who works on it and himself and the perception of their goals and intents and stuff. I think Pat himself is probably pretty durable to the flame, but I think everybody else involved is getting their asses beat, which sucks. What does my cat think about the article? He's sleepy, so he's chilling. You know, a lot of people are talking about 2XKO. A lot of people are like, yo, all these people who work for Riot Games, all of these people on the 2XKO team, none of them have the combined understanding of how to fix this game more than me. If you put Kled in the game, it would have been great. Let me fix the roster for you. Rengar, Set, Yone, Aatrox, Kayn. It's just like 12 men with weapons. And they're like, here you go. And you're like, that's awesome. I'm glad you play top lane. But like, what about fighting games? Have you played a fighting game? Fighting games are fun when you have different archetypes in them. I'm also seeing the most make-believe stuff. I read probably 20 factually untrue summaries of the timeline of the game or like how the shop works. I read people saying that I was flown out. First of all, their studios is a 40-minute drive for me. But I read that I was flown out to play the game like 50 times, that the 1v1 version of the game that I played was like a finished product and they could have just shipped it then, and like they should have just done that 5 years ago, and none of it true. Not even close. Everybody's mad, but there's really a few real reasons the game didn't do well. The game took a long time to come out. The name was horrendous. The marketing was horrendous. If you look at other non-fighting game creators' videos covering 2XKO closing, like look at Necrit, who makes lore videos about League of Legends and stuff. His comment section is like, wow, I didn't even realize this game was out. This video was how I learned 2XKO has a PvE mode. I thought it was in beta. When I saw the name of the video, Riot is dropping 2XKO, I thought the game was finally releasing. Almost every single person that I talked to that plays League of Legends was like, whoa, yeah, when is that fighting game coming out? And I was like, 5 months ago. And they were like, what? I don't know what to tell you. That is really bad. I don't think they believed in this game from the start, personally. And I think that they probably expected this to happen anyway. So why spend a lot of time and energy and effort promoting this game through your other stuff when you're just like, eh. How can you win there? Like, you're just doomed. I didn't agree with a lot of the things he said in that video. The difference is I play fighting games and he does not. So my understanding of the genre and his understanding of the genre are pretty different, and that's okay. It's how long it took to come out, the name, the marketing, the roster size, the launch. The release of the game was really bad. It didn't have console on release, and then when console came out, console didn't work. Yeah, I would say that not having any single player content in the launch is part of the launch being really bad. It was a bad launch. Everything else is like subjective. Oh, I think if they didn't have Caitlyn and they had my boy Tom Kench, it would have done amazing. Like, sure, whatever. But to me, it's those things. The more important, interesting topic that sprung up over the weekend, adjacently related to this, there's been a lot of fighting game releases, and there's a lot of examples of things that have done really well and things that have done very poorly. And this sprung from Max discussing, and he said we need to stop building fighting games specifically for the FGC. And then your response may be what Juna said, which is, I think devs should make a game they want to and not for anyone. That turned into people being like, what? Who is it made for? Which then turned into, well, the quote is you should stop making fighting games specifically for the FGC. Now, this is what I'll say about this topic. One, I don't really think a lot of modern fighting games have been built specifically for the FGC. I think a lot of them have been built trying to chase different audiences without satisfying specific fighting game community goals and aspirations in mind. And the second thing I'll say about this is, I think your game being built for fighting game players or not has very little impact on whether the game has success or not a lot of the time. To me, it makes more sense to build a game that is good for fighting game fans to play long term and focus on the other problems that have typically sunk fighting game releases. You should not worry at all about building the game for casuals, because there's two problems, right? One is most casuals won't know if the game is being built for them or not. And there are things you can do in the game to create an experience that makes the game fun to learn. And if you have other things in the game to do besides just playing another human being, that's a great way to start. They can know that the game is fun or not, and they can have opinions about what is good or bad about the game or whatever. But like, they have no way to evaluate whether the gameplay is good for them or not. The second thing is, even if you release a game that's really good, if the fighting game players, people who are more sweaty, if these players are playing the game and they're like, yo, this shit fucking sucks, it's made for babies, there's no depth to the game, it's made for literal children. Casuals will not hear that and be like, oh, I want to play now. All the good players are like, this game is made for literal drooling babies. Awesome, that's me. They're gonna be like, oh, this game is a joke? Oh, I'm not gonna play this. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls just came out. Are most people saying the riveting 4v4 gameplay of Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls is really what's bringing me in. I'm impressed by the visual presentation that only Arc System Works can do, pairing incredible Japanese aesthetics with the Western comic book sphere. Not only that, but this 4v4 gameplay is brand new and has evoked things within the tag game space that I've never experienced. No, man, everybody's fucking saying, damn, it's a shame that Sony has blocked the game in 100 countries, so I can't play it. The PC version of the game doesn't work and it lags like crazy. And it's a shame that it doesn't have regional pricing that's fairly priced in most places. Very few people have talked about the gameplay of the game. It's all, here are the failings of the launch. Whether the gameplay was built for the most casual player of all time or the most sweaty fighting game player of all time doesn't really matter, because most of the impact, negatively or positively, is how it's performing, handling in most people's hands. There is a pretty good example, which is probably Avatar. You guys have noticed Avatar has come out and it has 3 unfinished characters of a 12 character roster, and it's got no ranked mode, the combo trials are broken, and the training mode's unfinished, and people are like, yo, this game is gas. The thing is that those parts still affect the perception of the game, but people are just having so much fun playing it that they don't care. And let me ask you an important question about this gameplay. Is this gameplay built for casual players? No, it's the opposite. It's one of the most built for fighting game players fighting games made in the last decade. If you look at the successful launches and successful products in fighting games in the last 10, 15, whatever years, most of what people have been doing has been trying to build fighting games where they're like, we're going to try and ease people in and make fighting games that are easy for new players, and gameplay being dumbed down is one of the least important parts about their success. Let's take, for example, Street Fighter 6 and Strive. Street Fighter is a game that I think a lot of other games are trying to emulate. To start with, it's an IP that's popular, that's big. Let's move past that. It's a good product. It's got lots of single player stuff to do. It's very feature complete. You can do many things besides just play a match as Ryu versus Ken online. In some games, there is like nothing else to do besides me versus you online. That's like what 2XKO's launch is, right? There's tons of stuff to do with World Tour mode. There's tons of Avatar stuff to do. There's character guides in the game to teach you stuff. There is combo trials for every character in the game as well. The online play is like really well done. Great package, does really well. Is the gameplay of Street Fighter 6 so casual friendly that it just makes it so that everybody wants to buy the game more than everything else? Is that the thing? I don't think so. I think their onboarding for single player content is amazing, and I think their onboarding for having a control scheme for new players is really good. Street Fighter, historically, I think is a really, really bad game for new players. In something like Tekken, or a versus game, or basically any other game that's not Street Fighter, if you mash buttons, cool stuff happens. In 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and like all the other games, if you just mash buttons in Street Fighter, your character looks dumb. You're just doing mashing like a really fast punch next to you, or you're doing like a sweep over and over. You don't really do anything cool when you mash buttons in Street Fighter. Modern control is a way to give you access to special moves and combos, because links are really hard for people to do when they're new. Special moves are hard for people to do when they're new. Modern just gives them a control scheme that's simplified, and it helps with the onboarding of the game for them. An important distinction many other fighting games miss. It's not one button specials. That is why Modern is the way it is. Modern is built specifically for Street Fighter to solve the issues Street Fighter as a franchise has. It's specifically built for Street Fighter's weaknesses in mind. Other companies are like, we should just make one button special moves. This is the answer. We simply must remove motion inputs. And what they're doing is creating disgusting. You know the cover of Animorphs where they're in the middle and they're between being a fucking bear and a human? That's what the control schemes look like in so many modern games right now. Because instead of building two control schemes, control scheme for when you're new to onboard you, and a more comfortable traditional style control scheme for long term, they're like, oh shit, this modern control stuff was really successful. Let's like cram in this horrendous control scheme layout where you need 9 buttons mapped and just building these grotesquely unintuitive control schemes that are not good for either audience. So yeah, with Street Fighter, it's a great product. It's got good onboarding stuff. And even then, Street Fighter did not launch to the numbers it has now in terms of its current interest and viewership. They didn't just become huge because the launch was really good. The game was really good, which meant that it continued and it got support and a lot of people had lots of positive things about it. And then larger creators picked it up in Japan and other places and it started to become sort of a thing. Because the game was good, they had the opportunity to strike lightning in a bottle and get lucky. That is not something that's in your control. It's just something you have to hope for and get lucky that it happens. And the only way it really gets there is if you already have something good to start. You have to build the good thing and then you have to get lucky later. Was it because they just decided to build the easiest fighting game of all time, completely baby mode? No. And I don't think Street Fighter will ever be that way. Street Fighter, the way it is now and the way it's been since Street Fighter was a thing, is it's the most cut and dry, like simplest, most straightforward interpretation of what fighting games are trying to do. When you have an experience gap between yourself and someone else and playing them is really daunting even still. They didn't sacrifice their gameplay to get there. They just like built a game that's like fun and interesting and has a cool system, a more complicated system than the game before it even. Like Street Fighter 5, the V system is not super complicated. The difficulty comes from like one button hit confirms and the way you have to move around the screen, the way pressure is and the way you have to defend and stuff. In Street Fighter 6, they removed some of the mechanical difficulty from stuff like that and then put the difficulty in other places. Now, why is Strive so successful? If you had to pick a single reason, is it because it looks cool? Is it because it is simple, or is it the fact that it has motion inputs or whatever? The easiest, most solid answer, it's not close, is it came out with good online play during COVID. I don't think anything else is a more powerful motivator than the fact that it came out in a time where a lot of other fighting games out on the market had bad online play. During COVID, where you mostly had to play online, so your experience was going to be miserable because before that, the general thing for fighting games was, bro, why do you care if your fighting game has good online play? I can just go outside and play with my friends. Like, what are you, a nerd? You're playing in your house? An insane thing to be saying out loud in the big year 2019, but it was a very common sentiment at the time. And Arxis delayed the game, make sure the online play is really awesome. It was like a really big boom at the time, and it's still one of the most popular fighting games at tournaments. I think the YouTube viewership for it is always really good when I make YouTube stuff around it. And for the relative size of the IP, the game did very well. Perspective of that IP now in the mainstream is massive compared to how big the game was before. And now Arxis, the company, is like big enough that everybody knows who they are. A lot of other things about the product were not amazing, but it came out with good online play in a time where that was the main thing fighting games were missing. The outcry from people at the time about online play became so big that they set an example of, if you have good online play, people will care and it will rally them to your cause. And if you don't, people will fucking shoot your ass. So my point is, when it comes to those two games, right, that were, I think, very successful compared to the expectations, nothing to do with the gameplay. IMO is why those games are doing well. Now, if you want to talk about the bad launches, it's almost exclusively the product. Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6, you know, Capcom in marketing, and all fighting games do this, they try to say like, oh, we built a game that's easy for new players to play, but like it's got the depth for players who are like really interested. But people always say this. And the gameplay is subjective, as always, right? But the big thing is the online play is horrendous. The game has a rootkit. The game has horrendous input lag. They came out and they're like, oh yeah, also the story mode's kind of not done. We're gonna like later on release the rest of that story mode for your ass. And it doesn't look amazing. There's like not a lot going on in the launch to just be like, oh, that's awesome. Same thing, MVCI. A lot of people love the gameplay in MVCI. Like, not everybody, but online play is not amazing. It has problems, even though I think people think it's better than Street Fighter 5. I think it was really bad from when I played it. Story mode stuff was like short and whack and whatever. The word of mouth on the game was just horrendous, and it looked awful, and the roster was bad. The gameplay of the game itself, I think a lot of people really liked, but that is so hard to be enough. The thing about 2X is 2X has, to me, very interesting, fun, cool gameplay, but the product is buns. You know how this goes. You know the story. 2XKO being free does mean it's like slightly exempt from the good product part in terms of like the comparison of other things. However, other parts of the failings are still there. It came out and you couldn't play it on console, literally. And then when it came out on console, it was not playable. And the marketing was horrendous and the name was horrendous. The roster was small. Those things still count. Think, for example, of like multiverses. Can any of you tell me why you quit multiverses? I can tell you why I quit. I thought it was fun. And then I realized I had to play for 3 straight weeks to unlock my 3rd character. And then I played it online and I was like, bro, this online play sucks. And I was like, well, I can't unlock any characters, so I'm out. I'm sure a lot of you have played other genres. But if you've played League of Legends or Dota or Deadlock or Apex Legends or CSGO or Valorant, these other games, they're not a $60 box that you buy that has lots of single player and has other things to do as a product. It's just a very difficult online game. They just have better onboarding. There's more stuff to do in them, or they're from genres that are more popular. And that's it. I mean, have you guys ever seen Elden Ring? Like, Elden Ring is not an easy game. Souls games are hard and fighting games are hard. Lots of other genres are hard, but people are willing to play them. So my point is, every game is trying to build gameplay that they think is good and awesome and amazing. And whether you do it or not is like subjective to the person playing the game, right? Like, some people are going to be like, this is the coolest gameplay ever. And some people are not going to like it. That's just how it goes. You like look around, right? You see a lot of different fighting game companies are copying Street Fighter. But I think the most important, clearest successes the game have are not like put fucking drive, impact, and burnout in your game. If you're building a game only for casual players, you are not building a fighting game that is worth playing for long. Most of the good players will not want to play it, and the casual players who, even if the gameplay is built for them, will not play it long term. You should build a complicated, interesting fighting game that you believe in. That is very important. What's more important is you should build a good video game. It doesn't matter if you build the sickest fighting game of all time. It doesn't matter if you build the worst fighting game of all time. If you can't build a product that people can boot up and play reasonably, the gameplay will not be consequential. And if you would like to solve for new players not sticking with your game, you should look for ways to help onboard them, and you should build a good product. Those are the 2 most important things that you can do IMO. From my experiences playing fighting games, doing the slams, and showing 100+ new streamers how to get into fighting games and like seeing their experiences, the gameplay is the part that is least consequential for them at the start. As they play more and more, it will become more consequential, but it's completely subjective. Some people think Street Fighter's fun. Some people think Tekken's fun. Some people think both are fun. Some people think neither's fun. You can't change that very much, but if you have a good product and you have good ways to get them on board and started in the game, that's as best you can do IMO. Modern fighting games, more and more, are trying to design away from many of the things that fighting game players like in the goal of capturing non-fighting game players. Sanitize parts of their games that they view as like maybe frustrating or overwhelming or gonna like scare away casual fans. And then they build the worst product of all time. And then they're like, damn, we should have made our game even more simple. And it's like, guys, you can't make a product worth money. You have lost your casual audience due to not being able to build a competent game. And then you stick your existing audience with gameplay built for children instead of people who enjoy the genre. The product needs to be good enough to justify me spending money on it. And if you can't do that, you're going to build a game that sucks for the people who's left playing it and a product that sucks that nobody will want to buy. And then you have 15 years of fighting game releases. And that is not awesome. I'll also say this, when it comes to this game, what they tried to do was pretty different than what most of the market is doing. In fact, I would say still the tag game market is like pretty open if Marvel Tokon doesn't do amazingly, depending on how it goes. All of the tag games that have come out have not really hit in the same way that like Marvel vs. Capcom and Dragon Ball's releases have hit. And like trying to do a 2v2 tag game with duos is like a pretty novel, fun idea. If it released with, I think honestly, even the same size roster, but like a competent PC and console release at the same time and then had the pace they had now, I think they'd be doing a lot better. Still wouldn't get enough people to break even. I mean, maybe not. I think that's probably pretty likely, but I don't know if there's a game they could have built that would have had enough people on it if they wanted to straight be profitable. If they're just like, oh, it's growing, that's good, then like maybe. But there's a lot of people who say shit like, oh, if the game was 1v1 and came out in the same time or whatever, it would be a hit. First of all, no, man. But also, there's no way to know that, dude. Like, you can't just invent a reality where your idea is perfect and no one else could have ever thought about it because you're so fucking smart. I'm sure there's people who worked on 2XKO that are like, I wish we made a game that was more simple, or I wish that we made a game that was even more complicated. I'm sure there's people who believe both, or people who think they wish they made a fucking platform fighter or like a 1v1 game or just like a Grand Blue clone. I'm sure, you know, everybody has their own opinions about what they work on. It absolutely has to do with gameplay. What percentile of it do you think is the massive things around the launch of the game versus the gameplay? Can you think of examples of fighting games that you believe are successful only because their gameplay is good, or failed only because their gameplay is bad? Can you come up with some, and why? No one fucking likes tag, dude. Incorrect. There are lots of people who like tag games. You're just here to make things up. You don't want to actually speak about a topic and use your brain. You just want to be like, I read this Pat the Flip article. In fact, you might not have even read it. You might have been like, I read someone else's interpretation of the article, and I'm here to tell you why the game failed. I'm just here to laugh at your shit. So you're not even human. You said, you're so fucking wrong and stupid, dude. It's actually this. And then I'm like, okay, do you believe that? You're like, no, I'm engaging with you genuinely. I'm down to chat. I will sit here and talk to you about what you think about fighting games, like what you think about them is good or bad or fails or works or succeeds. But this is what I mean. Like, this kind of a dialogue does not exist because so many people will not pay attention to anything, read someone else's summary of a thing that they haven't paid attention to, and then try to come at you with it. And then when you're like, let's have a conversation, you suddenly don't have the ability to come up with anything interesting. It just falls apart. If you're wondering, if you're like, where are all these people coming from saying, oh, 2XKO's gameplay stinks and that's why it died? It just stinks because it stinks. I think most of these people hold the opinion that tag games suck. That's as far as their argument goes. The worst part about this game shutting down is every single human being who has the worst opinions you've ever heard is like, I knew I was right. Great first time chatter. Care to explain why your friend got a producer and product owner role promotion? And this, I don't know if you know this, but when this all happened, I didn't know this person. And second of all, I don't work at Riot Games. I hope that answers your question. The US is currently in an altercation with Iran. Care to explain? That is all Super TF's fault. I was at Frosty Faustings, and you know the screen thing where everybody was pissed? Like, oh my God, can you believe they're taking all the screens? A production person who worked at Frosty was like, oh yeah, I did that because something ended slightly early, so I just put this on. It was up for like 5 minutes while they were swapping over to the next game. But on social media, it was like, oh my God, Riot Games paid them $40 billion to fucking not show Grand Blue for 5 minutes. Oh my God. Like, it's so crazy. The game is just weird. Like, if you're a normal chatter, if you are a chatter who comes to my chat room often, and not when there's drama, you have all probably noticed the way people are pulling up in the last like 4 days to my chat. There is a lot of people who really don't fuck with this game and really don't fuck with the fact that I like the game. It's very obvious. Who's like a normal chatter, or who pulls up and is like, yeah, fuck you, Sajam, for liking this game, you stupid bitch. I'm happy this shit is dead, you fucking idiot. I have read the most insane shit I've ever seen in my life about the game, about fighting games, about monetization, about me. You just read the subreddit and you're like, here's why the game failed. You click their account and you scroll, and they've never typed or never made a thread in the 2XKO subreddit until today. Awesome. Very nice that this person has such a fascinating opinion about the game and like clearly has so much stake in it. Everybody who doesn't play fighting games got such sick ass opinions about them all the time. I'm like, bro, I play your game. My chat the last like 4 days has just been a cesspool of, I don't like this guy, I'm gonna go to his chat and try to start shit. Or I don't like 2XKO, I'm gonna go to his chat and try to start shit. Like, there are so many people like that. And I think for the most part, I've tried to engage fairly and been like, what do you actually think? And almost always when you ask them, they just don't have anything to say. Mostly because they don't even really probably know that much about what I like or dislike about the game. And it's just a nice time to pull up and be like, haha, and then just like try to talk shit. Come on, you got any teeth? You want to fucking scrap with me? And then they're just like, oh, and they just vanish. The second I saw that the game was like canceled, I obviously know who people are gonna come swinging at. What up, you wanna fucking argue? Dude, listen, I saw the tweet over the weekend. I hit quote tweet. I started with not respectfully, and then I was gonna start typing things. I closed it and I clicked it and I just kept moving. I was like, oh, I'm good. The fucking goblin mask was calling to me, bro. I have gotten more flame for playing 2xKO, been called the most egregious things of all time without being paid, right? The things that I got paid for by Riot Games, right, are to run the slam. Every time I do the slam, I get paid to run the slam. It's part of running the event as we pay the staff. I am part of the staff. What else did I get paid for? To commentate tournaments? The Chipotle event at Riot, that one. I don't know if I ever got like a sponsored stream by them, did I? I've done more sponsored stuff for Marvel Tokon in the last like week than I did for 2x, because Sony and Marvel they got the marketing money. They're pulling up, you know. They're offering me money to do things I was going to do anyway. Like, can you make a guide for Marvel Tokon? I'm like, if you insist. Diaphone, okay. You say I don't get why I'm an industry plant for 2xAO and not the other games. I made the same point. I've done more sponsored streams and sponsored content for basically every other game than 2xKO. But if you play 2xKO on stream, people will be like, you shill bitch. It doesn't make any sense. We need to hire the people running interference from Mike Z and Jeff the Hero on Twitter to defend the 2xKO devs, bro. No one's more powerful than someone in my chat saying Mike Zahir. I took psychic damage when I read that shit. I was like, I'll never see him the same. That shit just fucked me up. I'm a plant? Like a fucking ficus or what? You calling me a fucking palm tree? A fern? I'm a fucking eucalyptus? A money tree? And no one knows I'm a ficus. Me when I'm a ficus undercover as the fighting game streamer? Wait a minute. There's an awful lot of natural lighting in that office. Now I ain't calling you a tree, but you use photosynthesis? It's that shit that plants do. I don't care. Alrighty then, sunroom. Just they're on to me. Wait, are you trying to call me a plant like you don't mean tree? You mean like an industry plant? I assumed you were calling me a tree. That would make more sense. I've been making fighting game content on the internet for 16 years. Not exactly someone you can be like, this guy came out of nowhere and he's being promoted by big industry, especially when like every big thing in our community I no longer do because it's been purchased by Saudi Arabia. The thing is, there are so many people willingly selling our scene out for any amount of money that they can be offered. So many leaders in our space are so happy to sell our community to whoever will offer them money the fastest. So when you talk about people who are industry plants, people who have not the best interests of fighting games in mind, I think there's like plenty of other people who fit that reputation more than I do. I may sell out my morals for whoever writes the biggest paycheck, but you like 2xKO, so I win. God damn it. Praise be to His Royal Highness. Let me just give you an example of the kinds of money that you lose by doing what I do. Imagine how much money for a streamer of my size a year-long deal with Chipotle is. It's a lot. And imagine how much money I could make commentating, restreaming, making content around the 8 EVOs that they're planning to do next year for the competitive circuit. Not going to EVO loses me that Chipotle contract, loses me lots of other commentary gigs, loses me the finals for other events because they're just hiring the same people they hire for EVO. And then think about something like if I worked EWC, it is an enormous amount of money, right? That's true. You can't pay your rent with your morals, but you can make decisions that you think are correct anyway. The entire purpose of it, in fact, is listen, people aren't gonna like that you're doing this, but we have infinite money. So who cares? I know plenty of people who have taken the money and then they were like, it's a real shame that I've gotten this money from Saudi Arabia because people have been really mean to me about it. And like, you're not doing it and it makes me feel like I am in the wrong for doing it. So I'm mad at you. And you're just like, you have a sack of money. You should be happy. Like, didn't they offer you enough money for you to be morally okay? Isn't that the point? Suddenly, when you think about like the morality of it, it makes you unhappy with your decision and you're blaming me? A real conversation you have to have sometimes. In fact, you'll notice, probably importantly if you pay attention, that there's far more ire for me not doing it than there is for people who do it. I'll be like, I will not sell out the integrity of what I believe in about fighting games as our scene, who should be allowed to own it, for money. And then everybody else is, I'll do it. And everybody's like, yeah, get that bag, bro. That's what's up. That's an odd part of it, unfortunately, and the truth I think about how it goes. The other thing is like, who gets the money? Have you thought about that? You're like, dude, this is great, we're building fighting games. Have you benefited? Are you getting the money? Who's getting the money? I don't think Xiaohai's wife feels the same way. You found someone who's got the money. I'm really happy for her and Xiaohai. If you took away all the money that he has from EWC, which by the way, it sounds like they're not paying people out. Weird that you didn't hear anybody covering it, but there's people in the last 2 weeks tweeting like, I haven't been paid from EWC. I haven't been paid from EWC. I haven't been paid from EWC. Nobody seemed to cover it. I wonder why. That's already hilarious because what is their purpose if not to give away all the money that they have? If you took away all his money from EWC, I think he'd still be a lot richer than you or me. If you want a TLDR of my discussion, you should build complicated, fun, awesome fighting games. You should make the product itself onboard players and be fun and cool and great. That has worked for other fighting games that are big. I think it's a great way to not have to compromise and alienate your fighting game fans, because if you make a game and the product's good, but then all the fighting game fans are like, this gameplay fucking sucks, it's ass. Like imagine you make a fucking game, the product's cool, people are happy with it, and then every YouTube video is like, boy, this game's gameplay is fucking trash. Everybody's like, boy, this gameplay sucks. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, yeah, it's Tekken 8. Tekken 8 is like, it's a product people like, there's a lot of good things about it. Everybody fucking hates the gameplay. And yet, Tekken 8 didn't do bad. Like, it sold well, casuals were playing it. Even when we talked about Tekken 7 to 8, I think a lot of people don't like the gameplay of 8. And a lot of people were like, why didn't you make it like Tekken 7? But like, Tekken 7 was a defensive game by the end of the game, right? And so Tekken 8, they aimed to make an offensive focused game. I totally understand why they would want to do it. Not that it was a good idea, but because if you're a developer and you build a game and it's really defensive, are you like, okay, now that we built a really defensive game, let's work on the next game. Do we want to make this shit really defensive again? Everybody's like, no, man. Like, they all hated the defensive game. Everybody was mad at Tekken 7. They're like, it's too boring. So you're like, all right, let's build a fucking crazy ass offensive game that's fucking wild. And then everybody's like, why didn't you make it like Tekken 7? And they're like, you hated Tekken. You said Tekken 7 stinked and like it was too defensive. And so we built a game that we wanted to make that was more offensive and fun. And like, I don't know, sorry. And then they have to make adjustments. You know, obviously there's more complicated parts to it than that. I understand why they would want to try to do something different. It makes sense. But then now they just have to make patches making it more similar to the game everybody said they hated when it was out. So I don't know. It's also the problem of making a legacy game, to be fair. One thing about Street Fighter is every time they make a new game, they completely reinvent everything and make it completely different. And that's like pretty nice for them because they can just like do something brand new. Don't know how you're not exhausted by all this. Found this tweet out of morbid curiosity, plus listening to the stream is gonna have me emotionally dead for the rest of the day. I mean, he looks tired. That's just my face, bro. I can't do anything about that. This is how I look. I think a lot of people are very sad and a little burnt out about the state of fighting games. There's also a lot of people really happy with what they're playing, to be fair. Like, Avatar is doing very well. Tokon is new and shiny, and there's a lot of people who fuck with it. And I think there's still quite a lot of people who are like, well, fuck it, I'm still gonna play 2X. And those are like the newer titles, right? Stuff like Tekken, Strive, Street Fighter, those games are doing fine. And that's not counting lots of other games. But it definitely is the case that there's a lot of unhappiness on the timeline. I mean, if you look at any fighting game subreddit space, the conversation around 2XKO is insane. So many of you didn't play this and don't care about this and just have an opinion that now that it's closing down that you want to share. And that's awesome for you, but I personally don't care. I have no interest in what you have to say about the game that you don't play and you don't care about and you're just happy that it's dead. Dude, I had a dream that they added another Battletoad to KI and he was like insanely broken. And I was like, didn't we learn our lesson the last time? I was like, what?